So, welcome back to the shit take. Today, we're just kind of giving a brief review over super popular show right now, Squid Game. I watched it probably within the first week that it came out.
Yeah, no, I actually finished it earlier this week.
Cool.
Uh, the episode lengths were a little bit surprising to me. Like some of them were much shorter than others. So I got to like the first three episodes.
I think
and
episode 8 was like a 27-minute episode. I think it was meant to just be like a short thing because they had one long episode planned at the end.
Exactly. Like it was just like, hey, this is going to be up to the events, and then here we are, literally. This was like episode 9 was almost like just an epilogue of events, that were to come, or just how everything wrapped up, really. But yeah, no. Once I got to, like the first 3 episodes, I was like, okay, it's like 2 a.m. here. Let me like take a break. And then when I saw the other links were so varied, I was like, okay, I think I can get through this in another sitting. But yeah, no, I was pleasantly surprised at the whole nine episodes. It told the story, man.
Yeah, no, it did a good job. The main guy, he was pretty fantastic the whole way through. I got to give him a lot of props because I you know me, I watch a lot of Korean shows, and like not even like battle royales, right? Like I'll watch anything Korean. I don't know why. Like for some reason, just about 7 or 8 years ago, I just started watching them, and they have a really good quality about them. They really do.
Yeah.
And so
like that whole like boom of the Korean arts coming here with the food, the clothing, the TV shows, the movies, the music, like America, they're welcoming that. Netflix is like, hey, we'll air it.
Netflix
we'll market the hell of it. Yeah, even Walmart just recently announced like a whole Netflix hub apparel line with like Stranger Things, Squid Game, that was it Coco Chameleon or something like that. Like they're merchandising this, like they want people to watch this stuff. They want it to be well known.
Yeah.
The creator said that he had shopped this around for 10 years before they finally decided to produce it and air it in Korea. And people are already demanding a sequel. So I think with like Netflix backing that popular demand from the audience, I think that could very well be a possibility. Whether or not we think it's necessary is another thing. But some people really just enjoy seeing a story go on and on until eventually they get tired of it.
Until it gets bad.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. Like this is how many shows.
And that's what I actually like about a lot of Korean shows is they're one and done. Like, a story gets planned out, and if it's super popular, you might see it continue on for sure, but it's always going to dip in quality. It might hit a point where it's always going to peak, right? It's always going to hit that point where it peaks, and then it's going to start to dip. It's always going to happen because you run out of content. You know what I mean? Like you run out of story that you can tell, at least story that makes sense and is sensible and coherent. But if you start going off the rails and just delivering it in a way that's you turn something like this, right? Like this first 2 or 3 seasons, generally about the same, and then what happens, right? Look for a supernatural element. You know what I mean? Like it happens in movies, it happens in shows. Like you always look for that supernatural element. Look at Fast and Furious. I hate that we always use Fast and Furious like as an example, but it is the best example. Like, come on.
It's such an exploitable standard, man, to do that. Like I was literally watching a random clip, like thank you YouTube algorithm. But it was like, I don't even know which Fast and Furious movie was. Maybe 6 or 7, but possibly 8. I don't know. But it was like Vin Diesel racing some guy, I think in Cuba or Portugal, with like a 1950s like rust bucket car, and the guy like had his 1950s like souped up, supercharged engine, whatever. And Vin Diesel's like, take it out. And the guy's like, what? He's like, take out everything but the engine. So he's taking out like the interior, throwing out the seats, making it as light as a car could be, putting a nitrous kit in it. And he's just like, oh, we're going to like, I think he takes like a paper clip, puts it in the engine, trying to get like a reverse torque or something. I don't know. I can't explain how this went on. And the comment section was just eating this alive. It's just like, how is this car supposed to go faster than this other car in reverse? And his car is like blowing up as he's driving it. There's like sparks and flames. breaking out the windshield so he can turn around and like reverse boost it. Like he's like now, and he pulls off the pin, and like it's just ridiculous, man.
And that's one of many examples you can pull just out of Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So you don't want to see something like that happen, and I'm glad because, like I said, a lot of Korean shows are just one and done. There's not. I mean, you don't really see like they're so popular you get a sequel and all that kind of stuff because sometimes the story is written to just be that story. It doesn't have to be all crazy, like it doesn't have to be remakes and remasters, and I'm talking about video games too. It doesn't have to be remasters. Yeah. We were talking about this a while back on our nostalgia video. It doesn't have to be that way. You can come up with something clean and fresh. And don't get me wrong, Squid Game's not perfectly fresh for sure. There's been similar things before.
Yeah. The reason why I give him so much like credit as a creator is because he straight up admitted being influenced by other very well known death game style. And it's not, again, like I'm not even trying to shit on Squid Game. I thought it was a very well done thing, but it doesn't, in my opinion, do the death game as good as other places did it. But the difference between that and something like Hunger Games, where she like, oh, I've never heard of Battle Royale. Like, come on, like you're full of shit. Like this guy's like, oh yeah, Battle Royale, and what was it? Was it Liar Game? I think was the other one he mentioned. Or even Alice in Borderlands. There's a lot of them. Like it's starting to become that that new like.
And Alice in Borderland is on Netflix.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Again, like, another one.
Squid Game gets so popular, right? And then you have one that's almost exactly of the same style.
Yeah.
Same quality.
There's another one that I read a few years back. It was called like Life is Money, and it was a very similar style of like, oh, put these people in a group together. Last one standing gets all this money style thing. But people probably might have not have heard of it.
Yeah.
But there's another one too that recently it came out like within like the same timeline that this guy created this. It was called As the Gods Will, and even some of the games that they play in that are very similar. Yeah. Like they basically play the Japanese version of Red Light Green Light with the Daruma doll, and like people have even noted similarities, and it doesn't mean that like this is a ripoff. This this is better, this and that. Like it's just like okay, like it's similar in nature that you can give a constructive criticism. You can make the fair comparison. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's like what people like want to like. Not necessarily stop, but like as soon as you say something like, oh well, it was just this, it was just that, and it's just like, I'm not saying that one has to be better than the other, even if that's true. I just think that it's okay to compare them and say, hey, well, this is what it did right, this is what it could have been better at,
Yeah. Just because one exists doesn't mean we can't have another one that's good.
Like, exactly. It's the same thing like you said earlier with Aliens and freaking Pandorum. Like, you don't have to be like, just because like they set the standard, like the first real major alien movie doesn't mean like somebody else can't have that alien in space movie.
One of the things I did like about Squid Game, like really liked, was the character Ali.
Oh yeah.
It makes me so happy to see a character that's not Korean in the show itself speaking perfect Korean. Maybe not perfect, but perfect enough for me to realize that it's just the same as anyone else in the show. And he's not Korean.
No, he was an immigrant. He even said he was from Pakistan.
It's in the story, but not just that, right? But he's an actor. Like, here's the thing, right? You see it a lot with. Let's just use for example, right? The Asian hate here in America, right? Like, in general, when it comes to casting, you don't see a lot of randomly casted, Asian characters in movies because, for whatever reason, right? You just don't see it a lot. So whenever it does happen, it's nice to see, of course. But one thing you really don't see is you don't see these Asian countries casting, non-Asian characters in any roles. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or any non-Asian person. You know what I mean? So it's nice to see that, and I think it's refreshing. It's what we talked. You mentioned it a while back on the original video that we talked about that one guy who lives in Japan now and he speaks perfect Japanese. Like
Commander Hilltop.
People are out there. People are out there, and you can get them for those roles, and it's just because it's not English or it's not Chinese, so it's not one of those languages that the majority of the world speaks, and so maybe they just find it hard to find somebody to cast because, I mean, what are you gonna do? You want Chris Hemsworth to play a character in your Japanese movie? You have to have Chris Hemsworth fucking learn Japanese. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So
like John Cena learned like freaking Mandarin, man. Like he was in like promoting Chinese stuff. Like he was on those shows speaking Mandarin. Like unless you want to have that translator there on the ready, like if you want somebody to really promote your product regardless of like the country, like yeah, you got to have that open dialogue with them being able to like either be bilingual or willing to learn, the language.
So yeah, I mean, you find yourself at these obstacles, when it comes just to casting alone. And I'm not saying I have any opinion as to why are people of non-Asian descent not casted in Korean shows. There's nothing to complain about there. Nothing to complain about there at all, right? All that I'm saying is it's really nice to see that somebody stepped, because I mean he had to have learned Korean at some point, right?
Yeah.
And got recognized for it and got a fucking role for it. Well, that's pretty fucking cool in my opinion. And he did a good job too. Played a good character.
Yeah, like
I actually liked all the characters. All the main characters were strong.
Yeah, even for his character too. Like he was a migrant worker, came from Pakistan and South Korea, providing for his family. Got screwed out over because the guy was being a dick, wasn't paying him. Literally went there trying to. Well, again, and once you get to past that point, everyone's there voluntarily, so you can't say, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that. It wasn't fair to him." Blah blah blah. Like no, like that's the one thing. Like I didn't feel sympathy for a single character whenever they went back in there. Everything that happened to them, like yeah, the circumstances might have been shitty, and you can call me out on it if you want. But at that point, they had all willingly volunteered. So like y'all can come for me if you want. But it's like, dude, like. Don't get me wrong, like he definitely was dealt a very shitty hand by like who eventually becomes like within the main antagonist, I should say, because that guy fucked him over, yes, but it's just like, man, dude, like at that point, like I know he was supposed, and see, this is the thing too, like he was supposed to represent like the real innocent out of all of it, like because he was just like, oh, what do you mean? Like I don't even know how to play these games, and then he started beating him at it, and the guy's like, whoa, you lie, you didn't tell me how to play. And even and see, that's the thing too, because even like the shitty gangster guy who was like losing super bad, it's like, well, we should play another game. It should be based on fairness, right? I should get demanded. And even that guy in charge of his game specifically was like, request approved. Yeah, like he let him do it. So you can't tell me like they didn't say anything to their guy. That's on them. And I'm just saying, like they all are kind of like flawed, and I think that was probably the point. Like you're supposed to all be flawed, because even the main protagonist is a heavily flawed character, but he was at least trying to do something. Like even the female protagonist, and don't get me wrong, like that actress, like she exploded in superstardom from this. Like her, I think they mentioned like her Instagram and Twitter pages like went into like the hundreds of millions. She was getting like Versace and like Gucci designer lines to model for and all that stuff. So like, hey, good for her, man. Like that's the whole point, right? Like you want that international success to come from something like this. But her character, she was the North Korean defector trying to make money to bring her parents over, because of this, the little brother was in the orphanage. But she was like, she was stealing, she was involved in gang activity to take that money. After the main character literally won that money in the beginning of, what was it, episode 1, episode 2? Like he was getting ready to pay off his debts, he would have been like, somewhat better, and then she fucking steals all his money, and then he notices it, and it takes her a while to warm up to him. And it was just like, dude, at this point he should be like, he was extending the olive branch to you, so
It was nice to see the main guy from Train to Busan.
Yeah, he's fucking cool, man. Like it was pretty awesome.
Just a little cameo role, but it was good.
Yeah, and speaking of cameo roles, like Lee Byung-hun was like the ultimate dude. That guy's awesome. And again, like that whole subplot was kinda pulling that line of being 100% unnecessary if they didn't do anything with it.
Literally nothing came from it. But then again, right? Like if they're setting up for a sequel,
if that's the big thing,
who knows what they have planned?
The
I
idea
feel like they intentionally left it super open.
Because okay, first of all, I don't think the brother's dead. If we're gonna talk about like theories here, when he shot the brother, he shot him like in the same spot that he shot him in, which was the shoulder. Yeah, so he fell, and whatever. He did manage to get the phone call out. So on the off chance that people were looking for him. The reason why I say that is because one of the rumors that I had read was if they do a second season, it would be skewing more to like the police involvement while all this crap is happening. So they could set up to be like, hey, you know, what was it? What wasn't involved? Blah blah blah. Maybe they rescue him. Maybe they don't. Because I thought that role, while good, was just so unnecessary. Like he never interacted with any of those characters, so it was just like you're literally trying to tell two separate stories at the same time under the same backdrop, and it was just like I don't understand.
And they did a good job portraying all that tension of him being alone, just kind of alone amongst like the entire staff themselves.
It was insane, dude. Like he solid snaked that shit.
Especially a staff that's like super well rehearsed, and you know any small things that would get you caught. Yeah.
And it did, and it did. Yeah, they even said, "Oh, what do you mean? You were there. You're not supposed to be here." Blah blah blah. And he was like, knocking out. You know, we killed him. He killed the other guy to take his mask to try and like infiltrate it. And then too, especially at the end though, whenever he confronts his brother and he's just like, "Oh, your standard, you know, revolver has 6 shots. You already fired 3. One of them is a blank, and the other one is like a non-lethal round. So he literally only had 1 bullet left." I was like, "Oh my god, dude! Like that's crazy."
And then one of the parts that had me asking more at the end of the show, they're hosting another game, right? They're hosting another game, but then you have to ask the question, right? Like the police would have had to have been involved for over a year now, you know? Why wouldn't they have reached out to the main character after he had already made complaints regarding this fucking game? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are different.
Yeah, it was imperfect.
Yeah, for sure.
I've seen harsh criticisms on both ends of it, and you know, like I said, like I enjoy it. Again, I don't think it was the best, but I'm not gonna like shit on it like, oh, this was stupid, this is dumb. Like the games were kind of, you know, they were what they were. I thought it was kind of towards the end there, especially whenever they were doing the bridge, where the guy was just like, oh, let's make it harder and turns off the lights. Like fuck you, dude. Like literally 50-50 chance of dying. Like, do you really need to turn off the lights?
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, how he kept that last marble. I was like, why didn't they collect that marble? But whatever, we're just gonna ignore that. And then it's just like, oh, do you have another one? It's like, dude, I shouldn't have even had this one. What do you mean, do I have one? I was like, get out of here.
Wouldn't that have been why he had an extra marble?
What do you mean?
Well, I always kind of took that as, because, I mean, we all know how the movie or the show plays out.
Yeah.
The old man ends up being
the
organizer. I always thought that he gave him an extra marble. I guess that's how I took it. He gave him an extra marble because the next game is going to be that.
Possibly, because you know he was like, "Oh, we're good friends, right?" And see, the thing is, like, people got all mad.
I'll be honest.
You see all the.
That was a heartbreaking moment. I was like, God damn this, and they played it out a good 20 minutes of this fucking like, I can't believe I'm cheating this old man, who's calling me a friend, you know.
And see, that's the thing that pisses me off when everyone's like, oh, the Ali, he got screwed, all that stuff. And I was like, dude, like, the thing with the old man was, like, 10 times more heartbreaking.
Yes,
and I know a lot of people are going to come for me because they're like, oh, it was bullshit when you see him, you know, the whole betrayal behind the organizer. I was like, dude, that doesn't change the fact that he was doing that shit with him the entire fucking time. He literally said, I wanted to replicate the times when I was younger playing with my friends. He still fucking did that. Everything that happened with them was 100% real. It wasn't a fabrication of anything. He even said in the beginning, he's just like, oh, I was even beating you in that one red light, green light. Like, he still saw this collection of them. He still fucking helped him out when he was sick. You know what I mean? Like, that didn't take away from anything, and he still answered his question. He even told him, do you want to play one last game with me? And then he died. Like, he didn't fucking, like, he left frustrated, sure, but he wasn't sad. I was just like, come on, dude. Like, I hate when people don't yeah, like, you don't understand what a character development is. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he was doing throughout the entire thing. And that's why I was like, I liked the 9-episode runtime. They didn't overly stretch it out. Like, it was fine the way it was.
I will say, though, the moment they showed his hand and said that he had to withdraw, the leader, essentially, the moment they showed his hand, I was like, is that I bet you that's the old fucking man, right? Yeah, we'll edit that out.
The point I knew it, honestly, is that they literally made a showing of them having all their deaths on screen, and whenever he kills the old man, he's behind like that pillar, so you see a gun, but you don't see a body standing up.
Yeah.
So you didn't hear a thump, you didn't hear a body flop, you didn't even see like any blood. So I was like, okay, like that was a purposely done camera angle. Because even with when the two girls are just talking there, and she's like, bye, you know, it was nice making a friend. They showed her die, yeah. And even the Ali, like they have the gun in the back of his head, like it's just like it's all there in front of you.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I will say. I will definitely give Squid Game props for this. Is they did not shy away from showing like the corpses. Like, no, these people are dead. There's no, oh, maybe they survived sort of thing. Like, no. Especially the last, what was it, episode 8 with that whole her death was fucking bullshit. Like the whole like exploding bridge. Yeah, no, not even the knife, dude. Like how like all of that glass.
How it started.
Yeah. It sucks too because there's that huge fucking.
Well, they did warn
chunk of glass.
They did warn them that at the end of the time the will explode and you'll fall to your deaths.
Yeah, but it was just like, dude, like 2 seconds, and they're like right there. They're like, oh, okay, we're fine. And then all that glass just happened to like freaking explode coming towards them. Because, you know, they show like, like glass cutting their face. But she got this giant freaking shard in her gut. And again, it reminded me of Battle Royale because that's how like the major anti-hero of that series died, you know, the freaking wound to the stomach. But it was just like, man, like she was like at threshold of pain. And then when she goes to the bathroom trying to like wash it up and like tighten it while she puts on like the suit jacket, and then yeah, he freaking stabs her in the neck. What a fucking asshole.
I'll say
You're gonna give a number?
Number out of 10. I would say honestly, just on its own, standalone, I'd say it's a high 7. High 7, maybe close to an 8.
Okay. I can agree with that. Yeah, like there was definitely like I said, like issues, but I don't think it like condemns the show. I thought it was good. I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
Like if a sequel were to be made, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'd say yeah, like, you know, more world building maybe, you know, like because especially with how it ends, like it seems like he wants to go on like this one man like, you know, crusade against it.
He survived and usually can survive anything, you know.
Right, and see the thing is, whenever like those sort of games set up a sequel with like, oh, the hero's returning, they almost always die like within the very beginning of it. It's just like, you know, it's like you can't. How many times can you cheat death? Is basically what the, you know, the question's answering. You know, it's asking you that.
Yeah.
So if he has that police interaction, maybe he teams up with the brother. I think like something could be done. Because I mean, he basically like. He's essentially sacrificing his own family at that point because he didn't go on the plane. Even the people who are so clearly watching him just turn around, go on the plane. Yeah, it's just like what?
Like they're already telling you you're at a super disadvantage. We can see everything. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
we knew everything about every single person that joined. What makes you think that we don't know about you after the fact? Especially when we have your debit card, or we open that account, dude. Like we have everything.
Exactly. Yeah. Even when the bank calls them too, they're like, "Oh, you haven't been touching your winnings. Is everything all right?" Blah blah blah. Can I borrow 10,001? And then the flower lady too. Oh my god, that's creepy.
Yeah.
It's like they knew where you were, man. And see, the thing is too, like a lot of people are like, "Oh, this was unfair. This was unfair." It's like, dude, they made a fucking stagnant point to say like everything was 100% fair to everyone. I mean, they even killed. Yeah, well, they even killed the doctor though for like, you know, the purity of the game. You know, you ruined that. They killed everyone involved in this whole thing.
It was until they turned the lights off during the glass.
Yeah,
that was the only part that seemed a little bit off to me. Because I mean, still everybody has the same chance. But they don't have the same chances before you've changed the game. Like,
exactly. No, yeah, you're changing the variable. I agree with that, of course. But even like the last game, the Squid Game, is just like, all right, like this is it. It was a literally one-on-one match. You know, that's all you can do.
Open with the sand attack.
Yeah, dude, that was so good. Inspector Royale.
Like,
Inspector Royale.
What do we call it when we make it across the bridge? I don't remember. Pop, fuck you.
Yeah.
This is what we call it.
Knife too. He kills himself. I was like, eee.
It was a good. It was honestly. It was well thought out. It was well planned. If they have something in mind for a sequel, I would like to see how they expand on the detective's role. I mean, just seems weird that they would go a year without investigating this company.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And clearly they haven't investigated it, or if they have, they haven't gotten very far because they're still putting it on a year later. You know. I like the old man. I love the relationship between him and the main character.
That was cool. Yeah.
For me personally, that was the most like heartbreaking part was, you know, whenever he decided I'm going to go ahead and cheat this old man. He's already losing his mind. You know, you can hear the thoughts without him actually saying anything. Because a lot of time you hear like a monologue that's been being done inside their head, but in this one you didn't need it because it was so well planned out. It was so well thought out. That was his thought process. Was this man's losing his mind? It'd be a waste for me to let him get through. You know what I mean? And whether you think that's right or wrong, I think personally it was. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I'd probably do the same goddamn thing because I ain't gonna fucking die, if I'm being honest. But, yeah, I thought it was pretty damn good.
I agree, and like he even said like he was only doing that because he was already dying. He had the brain tumor, so it's just like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
you're literally trying to. Everyone was there clawing for some sort of goal, whether it was reachable or not. And even the supporting cast, they still had enough development that you're like, oh well, I wonder what brought them here. I wonder what brought them here. And there's those characters that were out loud with their intentions, making themselves as I'm super used for this, or I'm big and strong here. Yeah. And there's those ones that are kind of like keeping themselves like you're not even you're not really sure of their intentions, blah blah blah.
Yeah, and for like one of the best parts was the tug of war for me, right? Because one, cool idea just in general the way they had it set up.
Yeah.
Two, they were absolutely correct because I used to be on the tug of war team for our OTC team back in high school, and we were very good, and there is structure, there is a strategy behind tug of war, and it's not always just the biggest people win. There's a lot more to it, and I thought that was a really cool part because it took me back to my childhood, took me back to high school.
Hop 3 times and pull.
And then another thing that I thought that they did pretty cool was the gangster. The gangster himself. Nobody complained about unfairness. Nobody complained as much as that gangster. And I think that there was probably something being said there is that these people who are usually, these loudmouth, type gangsters,
of course,
always complaining about something. You know what I mean? Some kind of shit like that.
Even when he was getting outside help.
Yeah, and even one of my favorite parts in the whole series was whenever they're setting up for that second night and they're barricading, and he goes over there and he's talking shit to the main guy and he's like, "You think those guys are gonna fucking let you go on, dude?"
Yeah.
When it comes down to the end of this, do you really think that they have your peace of mind in their mind? Like, no, dude, fuck
Absolutely.
You. They can kill you too.
Yeah, no, it's how he says it to him. He's not even like, I don't even think he was like trying to necessarily get those mind games. He was like being honest. He's like, dude, if it was me, I'd kill you first. You're the strongest one here. Yeah. And he's just like, and he walks back like thinking about it. He's like, all right, what are we doing, Bess? He's like, get your sleep. We need to be ready for tomorrow.
Yeah, we're not doing.
And it's just like, oh, yeah, dude. Like he's like, oh.
Yeah, it was a good line. Even and a lot of the times in those in the Korean shows, they always get some really over the top, like whenever they have a white guy come on or somebody who speaks English, it's always someone who over enunciates and always someone who talks a very specific kind of way. And we kind of had that in this one too, but it was a little bit better than what I'm normally used to. But we had it again where it's just like, the over-the-top curse words and shit, like, what the fuck are you doing here? That kind of shit. It's just
one of the, more widely accepted fan theories was like whenever he chose the color, that was like, oh, you could have been, if you had chosen red, would you have been one of the jumpsuits or something like that? And it's just like, well, if that's true, then yeah, like how did he get elevated to his position? Because he was literally second only to the host, you know what I mean? Like he was right there telling everybody, oh, the host can't make it, I'm doing the master of ceremonies thing. So it's like the structure of that is whenever he first plays that paper game, he offers like, you can pick color, and he chooses the blue, so he ends up getting one of the jumps to the player. But the theory is if he would have chosen red, would he have been one of the pink jumpsuits instead? So I mean, I don't know how much traction that holds because like I said, like they never really defined a those guards or whatever, they weren't supposed to talk to you unless you're spoken by somebody else. Whenever he took it off, there were people like just like them. It wasn't like they were mute or had their some sort of weird brain control. Like And then they shot them because they said you're not supposed to let people see you. So it's just like, all right. And even the whole organ trafficking thing, he's just like, oh, I don't care what you do.
He's like, you can do whatever the fuck you want with these bodies afterwards. Just don't fuck with the sanctity of the game.
Exactly. So that's what it came down to. So it's just like, all right. And at that point, wouldn't it have been like more like, I guess, safe for that guy just to have been pulled out of the game and just done the freaking doctor stuff? Like, yeah, you're probably not gonna get as much money, but it's just like, dude, you're not risking your life as bad. But no, like they shot the hell out of him too.
Yeah.
So
fair is fair.